Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to attempt to read my slides, or to read my presentation that I prepared earlier. I figure if it's important enough for you guys all to come out and to be here, then it's important enough for me to get the words right. While I wait for my computer to come on here. Hopefully it will. Otherwise, this will be a short presentation. This might be a very short presentation. Contact support, yeah. I think the problem is when you set one computer on top of another computer and they both have magnets in them, things don't work so well. So, what's that? All the lids are closed. So like all the leaves are brown. All right, there we go. So the other day I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's somebody who's really not in the technology world, in the technology domain at all. He's just kind of an average person that you might run into at some place like not a HackerCon. And I was talking to him. He said, you know, every time I use something like the internet or my mobile phone, which now has the internet on it, and I don't really understand that, I feel like it's like all this magic stuff that's just going on, that's happening. You know, I don't necessarily know how it works, but it's kind of cool. I like to explore it. I like to have fun. I like to play around in it. And then when I see and talk to you, it seems like you're just doing all this magic stuff. You know, computers are magic to me. And you can manipulate the magic. You're like a double level of magic. And then he said, actually, it feels kind of like I've been dropped into the land of Oz, like I'm Dorothy. And I land there, and everything's in Technicolor. It's not in black and white. You've got all the munchkins running around and like singing songs, and they're handing me lollipops. And I don't necessarily understand it, but it seems kind of cool. It seems like a place I want to run around and explore. Seems like a really fun place. But then, in a puff of smoke and fire, the Wicked Witch comes in, and she's green face and literally a black hat, and she's like the black hat hacker, right? Everybody's scared, everybody runs from her, and then the White Witch comes in, and she banishes the Black Witch, and that's what I feel like you guys are, you hackers. I don't ever know which one is the black hat, and which one is the White Witch. You're just a bunch of witches doing magic. And I don't really understand it, but I'm glad that the good witches are there. When he said that, I didn't quite know what to say. He was comparing me to a witch, which, you know, is not my favorite comparison. I've been called worse things, but, you know, on his level, that makes a lot of sense. In his lifetime, he's about the same age as I am, 35, 36. Technology and computer technology has turned over 3 times, right? We've gone from mainframe computers that took up entire rooms to desktop PCs that took up the entire desktop, right? I mean, if you remember these things back in the 80s, it was a tower like 4 feet tall with a monitor that was like tiny, and then we kept moving at like 21-inch. If anybody ever had a 21-inch CRT monitor, you know what I'm talking about, the entire desk. And now we have phones, tablets, really small devices that have all the power that those did or more. Plus, you've got supercomputing on demand in the cloud, right? Some might call that over the rainbow. We've got connectivity like we've never had before. It started out, you have a computer or a mainframe, and it can't really talk to anything. Your desktop computer, when you first got it, couldn't talk to anything. Now, we've moved to wired and wireless computing, where I can get Wi-Fi. But we've even moved past that, and we've moved to ubiquitous connection, always-on connection. I've got a phone up here. It's always hooked up to the network, unless I'm on an airplane, in which case it doesn't work. But that's really amazing. That's 3 generations of technology that we've cycled through in less than 30 years. And we're getting ready to embark on something very different than that. Wearables, implantable computers, a body area network, personal area network. I mean, the computer chip in my shoe is going to talk to the computer chip on my glasses, and it's going to tell me how many steps I've walked. To me, that's amazing. I probably won't survive this next trip through the next generation of technology, just in terms of being able to keep up with it. I've willingly given up a lot of my technical skills, and I no longer explore new devices, new technology the way that I used to. I'm still interested in it, but I can't get down to that level anymore. I can't do it. So if this were the movie, this is the part where I'd be saying, "Leave me behind. Don't wait for me. I'll just slow you down." And then you guys would all run off and like do the cool stuff and hack the implantables and the wearables. Or maybe I'll just join my friend and we'll go to Oz, skipping around together and following yellow brick roads and trying to stay away from the black hat witches. But this is a really pretty massive intragenerational shift, and it's had a really big effect on humanity, our culture, and our social contract. What it means to be human has fundamentally changed. The human experience has fundamentally changed. And as we integrate technology more and more into what we do every day, the human experience ends and augmented reality begins. But where is that changeover? It's not something that's easy to see. When you are able to access your entire life story in HD quality on a digital device because you've been wearing Google Glass around for all of your life, is that a memory, or is that something extra? Is that, what is that? What does that mean? When our wearable technology notices somebody over there looking at us, it can send us a flag. Maybe it's somebody that we're attracted to, and so maybe we want to look and wink and buy them a drink at the bar upstairs, not downstairs. Maybe it's somebody who recognizes us, and so our wearable computing can look at them and say, all right, do I know that person? Where do I know them? Search the facial database, look at Facebook, crawl across the cloud looking for image of that person, and say, oh yeah, that's right, I met that guy at some conference in Indianapolis in 2014. He was a really cool dude. I'm going to buy him a drink. Upstairs, not at the downstairs bar. So is that our conscious mind? Is that a superconscious? Is there any difference between what we're able to do on our own and the augmented self? Moving to a slightly different realm, our culture really has to get used to pervasive tracking and surveillance. That box is open. Pandora's spilled that. Our loss of privacy and the fact that governments and companies know more about us than we know about ourselves. Whether we like it or not, metadata is it's a matter of public record now. What you've clicked on, the sites that you've visited, anything about you, the calls that you've made, the phone numbers and the location that you were in at whatever time. The predictive power of that information is just too powerful to ignore. It's too powerful to say, no, we can't do that. We're not going to do that. Because the reality is, it benefits us just as much as it benefits companies and governments. So how do we get past that? How do we wrestle with that? And what does that mean? Public policy, legal precedent, law enforcement that was adapted for an environment 30 years ago is now hopelessly antiquated. We have to have open debates on whether the internet is a telecommunications network or an information service. And what does that mean for established laws, regulations, precedents? That's what's at the heart of net neutrality today, is that debate, whether or not our policy classifies the internet as one or another. When privately created licensing agreements are treated as legal contracts, unauthorized access is applied retroactively. It's not that people and companies and governments are malicious in their prosecution necessarily. It's just that policy and law don't match reality anymore. The world has moved on from where it was 30 years ago. And you know, if you fast forward 50 or 100 years, a lot of these things are going to be dealt with. They'll be handled. We won't have to worry about it. When our grandkids or great-grandkids, as awkward teenagers, look back at this time in history, they'll think that we're goofy and confused about our technological development and our place in the world. Because they'll have already figured it out, or someone will have already figured it out, and it will just be the system in which they grow up. But these growth spurts happen periodically throughout history before settling back down, where you have multiple generations of technology change before you go back to where it changes maybe once or twice in a generation. We're at a key moment in history. Will you watch? Will you heckle? Will you help? Will you lead? You know, we have superpowers. We have the ability to bend the digital universe to our own will. But with great power comes great responsibility. My first day on the job in InfoSec was really, really exciting for me. I had been a computer geek most of my life. I had, been taking these things apart since I was 12, putting them back together. Usually, no extra parts, although sometimes, that's why you have a bucket, right? Breaking them just as often as I was building them, and then having to fix them, which uniquely prepared me for an environment of, break, fix, tech support. Also sometimes breaking into them. I like to say before I was a security professional, I was a security amateur. For example, my first year in college, living in the dorms, everybody would be woken up at like 3 a.m. from these guys playing, Warcraft 2, I think was the game back then. And it was just, they would crank it at full blast. Well, I had a Windows NT workstation, and they all had Windows 95 workstations. So if you remember around that time, there was something called the ping of death, which would kill anything that was Windows 95, but Windows NT was fine, right? So a couple of ping of deaths, and you hear these loud screams, "Oh, what happened to my game?" And then everything quiets down and everybody goes back to sleep. That didn't really make me a hacker. That kind of made me a hero within the dorm. That was pretty cool. So that was my superpower in college, so I could stop World of Warcraft or Warcraft 2 games as they were going on. So out of college, getting a job, fixing computers at a local hospital. After about a year there, a role opened up to be a security analyst. So I took it. I jumped at it. And so that's why, going back to my original statement, I was so excited the first day of InfoSec. Second day on the job was even more exciting. I got to do something just as fun, lead my first incident response investigation. There was a worm that was going around the network, and it was calling out to IRC botnets, and so I was tasked with fixing that, cleaning it up. Fortunately, I'd been infected with that one a couple of years before, so I already knew how to get rid of it. Sure enough, cleaned it up, used our automated system to push out the fixes, and that was done. My third day in InfoSec was actually kind of terrifying because I got a call from doctors in the natal intensive care unit. That's where the most fragile babies are brought to nurse them to full health just after they're born. They said that the fetal heart monitoring systems were all down. Those are the medical devices that keep tabs on the newborn's vitals so that the doctors and nurses have an early warning so that they can fix anything that comes up. The doctor on the phone said he knew it wasn't my job to really support them was the vendor. They had to manage it, but they couldn't get in touch with them. They didn't help. So I stepped in. Quick investigation showed, yep, medical devices have the same worm that was going around the hospital yesterday. So called the manufacturer, talked with their support team. They said, oh, well, this is a medical device, so we can't really fix it. If we patch it, then we have to go through FDA recertification, and we just can't do that. I said, okay, well, we've already dealt with this problem before. I know how to fix it. Give me access. I'll just do it. I said, oh, we can't give you access. It's a medical device. It's under support. You'd lose your support contract. So stuck, right? Hit a brick wall, hit the firewall. That wasn't really good enough. Having a hacker mindset means never let one failure stop you on your way to achieving your goal. So I wondered, if the network worm could break into these medical devices, could I? Sure enough, just the day before, Metasploit had released a module for the same vulnerability that the worm used to get in. I knew I could fix the problem technically, but it's not enough to know that I can do something with technology. We still have to ask, should we do that? So I worked with my boss to get permission. We drafted a quick statement and a letter. She took it to the CEO. The CEO looked at it, weighed his options, said, yep, we're going to do this. So within a day, I was hacking the box, dropping the patch, killing the malware, rebooted it, and everything came back up. Doctors were able to get back to doing doctoring. The first time I ever told that story was in Las Vegas last year. Somebody said, hey, you ought to go see this talk at DEF CON. It's called The Cavalry Isn't Coming. I think it would really be interesting for you. So I set my alarm for early Sunday morning so I'd be up in time to go. When the talk started, I found myself in a room of other security researchers and professionals, most of whom were thinking the same thing I was. Wow. There are a lot of people in the bar at 9 a.m., but I've got to go to bed. I'm tired, I'm exhausted. Fortunately, in the other room, Josh Corman and Nick Prococo were talking to a full room, hundreds of people, big crowd for a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. There were three simple but profound ideas behind their talk. That our dependence on technology is growing faster than our ability to secure it, that our technological capabilities have outstripped our ability to adapt to the social contract, and that our society has evolved faster than our laws. And security researchers are the key to restoring that balance. So to go into more detail, computing technology is rapidly adopted into the world around us. We struggle daily and often fail to secure our company's computer assets. Meanwhile, software and networks permeate every aspect of our lives. Our cars, our bodies, our homes, our public infrastructure. When human life and public safety are at stake, it's no longer acceptable to have the same failures that are routine in other information technology. We must know, not just assume, that the technology we depend on is worthy of our trust. Technology has changed rapidly what we are able to do with the world. We're being watched, tracked by corporations and governments. On the one hand, this gives us the utmost convenience, the phone's in our hand. On the other hand, it vacuums our privacy and allows repression of dissent. There's nothing in our human experience that's prepared us for pervasive surveillance and glass holes. We're struggling to adapt to the impacts that computer and network technologies have had on us as a society and as humans. We no longer ask whether technology can do something, but we haven't yet started asking whether or not it should. Our policy and legal apparatus stabilizes society by setting a standardized expectation and reducing harm, but it cannot keep pace with the rate of change of our technology. Policy is a tool for defining norms and expectations. Laws are tools to enforce these norms and expectations. When the cultural norms fall so far behind, policies and laws fall behind and are out of sync with reality. And our laws today indiscriminately criminalize security research. They fail to distinguish between those making good faith inquiries into the soundness of these technologies and those who are looking to exploit the weaknesses for personal or ideological gains. If you look around for whoever's supposed to be addressing these critical issues, think surely somebody's got to be some task force or some think tank brainstorming on this. As we've done that, one thing has really become clear. No one is. No one's waiting in the wings to come in and save us. The cavalry isn't coming. It falls to us. It falls to you to lead the charge. We, as the information security community, know what the problems are. We have the technical knowledge to know what should be changed. We have the white hat ethics that compel us to do the right thing. Like it or not, we're the adults in the room. That should scare the hell out of us. But it should never stop us. So after Josh and Nick got done with their talk, the idea had moved the hundreds of people in the room. Quickly, a web presence popped up, social media discussion list, brought people together to start discussing these ideas. The idea became a meme. The meme gathered other like-minded individuals. It spawned leadership tendencies in a lot of us that we just didn't know that we had. We couldn't just sit here and watch. We had to make the change we wanted to see for ourselves. So, I Am the Cavalry today is a global grassroots organization. It's focused on issues where computer security intersects public safety and human life. We strive to ensure that these technologies are worthy of the trust we place in them. We're seeking to organize as an educational group, focusing on medical devices, automobiles, home electronics, public infrastructure. Our message is that our dependence on computer technology is increasing faster than our ability to safeguard ourselves. As computerization and connectivity become more ubiquitous, it's important that we protect public safety and human life. Our mission is this: to ensure technologies with the potential to impact public safety and human life are worthy of our trust. We will achieve this mission through education, outreach, and promoting research, and as an independent voice of reason from the security community. The I Am the Cavalry movement is collecting, connecting, collaborating, and catalyzing. We're collecting existing research and researchers, connecting these resources with each other and with stakeholders in the media, policy, and legal domains. We're collaborating across a broad range of backgrounds and skill sets, and we're catalyzing research and corrective efforts sooner than would have happened on their own. Over the last 9 months since Josh and Nick gave their talk, we've learned a lot of things. We've bumped into a lot of problems. We've overcome a lot of things. We've grown, and we've also narrowed our focus down. So as we started talking to people, what we found out was that what really stuck, what really interested folks, was the devices, right? Medical, auto, home, public infrastructure. Those are big issues that span boundaries. The call for solutions is mostly going to be non-technical. Trying to solve a non-technical problem with a technical solution is doomed to fail. There was also a perfect storm in the last few months where Senator Markey sent out a letter to the car makers asking about what they're doing to ensure safety in the cars from cybersecurity. The DHS ICS cert published, along with the FDA, a notification on 300 medical devices that were imminently hackable, default username and password, just the lowest hanging hack. We've had a lot of stunt hacking going on with cars and medical devices. Public media outlets are really starting to pick up on this issue, and it gained instant interest and attention to the issues that we were talking about. To show how far it goes, like, even my mom got interested. I talked to her, and she was like, wow, that's cool, That's how you know you've broken new ground, is when, like, my parents' generation start to pay attention to this. Conversely, when we were talking with lawmakers about legal reform, we quickly found out that our fight was not their fight. in comparison with economies that are going bad, wars that are going on, re-election campaigns to raise money for, they just didn't care about these theoretical problems that might come up due to CFAA or DMCA, among other things. The things that we were saying just weren't what they were hearing from their peers and from others. And they felt like we were, to quote someone who would not want me to attribute this to them, they felt like we were a bunch of whiny little bitches crying about our problems, just like any other special interest group. And so they felt like they were hearing the exact same thing they hear from everybody else on these small little nitpicking issues. They didn't really get the significance of it. But when they started looking at some of the other things that were going on in the public safety and human life area, they were really interested in those things. And we were able to bridge that connection and say, well, you know, if we're not doing this research, people are going to die. Well, you should do the research. Oh, sorry, we can't. That's illegal. Okay, well, let's change that then. That's when they got interested. So being able to connect the public good to our legal concerns, that was what really brought us the opportunity to talk about that. A story that I tell that seems to resonate really well in that area is a friend of mine, Jay Radcliffe, almost died when his insulin pump failed. He got a different type and it happened again. Both of these near-fatal accidents were caused by software flaws in the pumps themselves. Digging into the flaws, because he's a security researcher, he found several critical security issues which could have triggered the failures. Another researcher, Barnaby Jack, found that he could make these types of medical devices administer a fatal dose of insulin from 300 feet away. When I said that to a crowd in the Space Coast Tech Council, all the air just got sucked out of the room. Everybody said, they didn't realize that, right? I mean, this is the Space Coast Tech Council. This is like literally NASA rocket scientists, and they're not thinking about these types of problems. Clearly, politicians aren't going to be able to think about those. They just don't have the focus in that area. When it came to talking civil liberties, we found out that A, social norms are still shifting quickly, and that B, others are already taking on a lot of tracking and surveillance issues, trying to establish the social norms as well as make sure that we preserve our civil liberties. As the norms shift, there's a wide spectrum of opinions that make getting consensus really difficult among all the stakeholders. And it's difficult to prevent an us versus them mentality, a confrontational mentality. So groups like EFF and the ACLU are already doing really good things in policy and legal circles. It's not to say that security research can't offer anything, and nothing's being done, just that that's not something that most of the folks who are involved in talking on the cavalry namespace, that's not something that we're actively doing. I feel like we just get in the way of the people who are already doing the good things, and so it would be a case where more is less. A lot of people have been really inspired by the cavalry message. Several people have come up and told us, hey, what you guys are doing is really inspiring. Even before they know what we're doing, just hearing that there's people out there who are looking out for the public good, that inspires them. They feel like it's definitely the right direction to go. And at the heart of the I Am the Cavalry movement, it's really about inspiring and motivating and empowering hackers to make the change that they want to see. There's an author by the name of Dan Pink. He writes books on motivation. He's got a really great YouTube video about what inspires and motivates us. And he said that once we get beyond a certain level of satisfying our needs, like a minimum income, some level of safety, whatever, we're motivated and inspired by three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is the ability to be self-directed. So feeling like you have control over your life, that you determine your own outcomes, that you can set your own priorities and produce your own results. For us, that means being able to choose our schedule, explore our own interests, work from home every once in a while, those types of things. Mastery is our urge to get better. Having a level of skill at something and seeing progress and development in that level, getting better. For a lot of us, that means doing technically sophisticated work that are challenging and helps build our skills. And purpose. Having a meaning, something that's beyond us, something that's bigger. Making a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs put it. Or making the world a better place. That's something beyond our day-to-day jobs. Not just making a profit, not just having money, but something that is much bigger, much more impactful to the world. And for a lot of the productive people in the world, that's why they get up in the morning. They find all three of those things. For a lot of us, that's why we got into security to begin with. Playing around with computers, that was fun. It was challenging. We learned things. We had the sense that we could reach out and touch something much broader than just what was sitting in our laps. But over time, our passion has become our day jobs. Our fun turned into work. Now we're putting 60, 80-hour weeks in, trying to circumvent corporate bureaucracy more than we are trying to circumvent firewall rules. We're giving everything we've got, just sliding backwards, trying to stay up. See another hack in the news, credit card breach, millions of records lost. Another 100 security alerts in your dashboard. It's a Sisyphean task. We're like Sisyphus in hell, rolling the ball uphill every day. Just in the morning we wake up and it's at the bottom of the hill again. We've got to do it. It seems pointless, purposeless. We're not learning anything. We're not growing, developing. We're not even self-directed anymore. At some point in my career, I realized that the medical device hack I talked about earlier was probably the peak of my professional career. In the nearly 10 years since, I haven't done anything as impactful to the world as that. I hadn't made a change that affected people nearly as much as that did. On my best day, I was helping companies get to the bare minimum to just scrape by, pass their PCI compliance, so that they could get out there and make a little bit more money. And on the worst days, my clients got breached. Millions of people were affected. And that was a mean reality, realizing that. And I was burned out. Burnout isn't something that we talk a lot about in the industry. It's come up recently. But we usually just get frustrated, hit a brick wall, feel lousy about it, and then get together over drinks and make another stupid user joke. Everything would be fixed. It's stupid users. But that's not really what's going on, right? We feel powerless. We feel frustrated, and we feel overworked. And burnout's had some pretty devastating consequences for us as an industry. Some people never get burned out. That's great. They find what they love, they do it every day, and they make sure that they keep having autonomy, mastery, and purpose. But others do, and we have to just claw our way out of it. And I think that's the inspiration that people see in the I Am the Cavalry namespace and movement. It inspires hope. And it inspires hope in a lot of people who haven't had much hope to go on for a long time. To make real progress on something positive and powerful. To staunch problems before they come up. To learn something new and valuable. To move from the trough of despair to the slope of enlightenment and the plane of productivity. It really is inspiring. But the I Am the Cavalry namespace is just one in a much, much broader movement and community. As I go around and I talk to people much more, I'm finding that there are people who have done things without us having to initiate it, right? They just felt on their own that they needed to go do it, and that's great. We're not the first people to feel like the road we're going down is no good and that we really have to do better. The feelings that catalyze that energy that have been put into this movement are really all around us. You see it every day. curiosity is a hacker prerequisite, right? We all love to explore new systems, new problems. And the Internet of Things, the civil liberties issues, and the legal and policy debates, those are a problem space that gives us a chance to explore once again the unknown that maybe we haven't had the chance to in a while. And this is a new and interesting problem space with new technologies, combinations of existing technologies. This is the kind of thing that got a lot of us started learning security in the first place. So that's exciting. I like to say that most pen tests that we do these days are like playing a video game with the cheat codes, right? I mean, it's easy. A lot of organizations, they're like Swiss cheese. You go through, you run a couple of tests, you get root. Yay, I win. But it's not really challenging, right? It used to be fun, but it's no longer fun if you're always going to win. With this problem space, it's like playing the game without cheat codes again. It's fun again. It's interesting. Not only that, the problems aren't trivial. The things we're trying to do are not getting access to a firewall. It's getting access to an insulin pump, breaking into a car. Like, these are cool things, but they're also impactful things. They're things that we're trusting our families' lives with these machines. It's not acceptable to fail, and we have to persevere. But the problems in this space will soon be known. We'll have identified all the issues, then we'll address them, and then they'll fade into history. You can help push that timeline forward. I think that's one of the things that excites me most, is that I can help accelerate this awkward phase and get to something better sooner. It brings a certain sense of accomplishment to know that we've been able to do that, to know that we've been able to impact the world. Even if we never talk about it, that gives us an internal feeling of like, wow, I did something really good today. It gives us a purpose and a meaning. If you do want to talk about it, there's certainly plenty of opportunities. If you look at a conference call for papers, recently they've been heavily tilted towards Android malware and PCI. Like, does it really matter that you found the 1 million first Android virus? I don't know. There's like 1 million of those that came before, so it's not super unique. Does it really matter if somebody gets on stage and says, our credit cards are in dire peril and you're going to get hacked? Like, I can pick up a newspaper and see that. I don't need to go to a conference to see that. But to go to a conference and see a talk on the list about hacking an insulin pump, hacking a car, that's cool. I want to go see those talks. Jay Radcliffe, Charlie Miller, Chris Balasek, they all got a huge crowd at DEF CON. So if you are in this for selfish motivation, why not? Go do that. I think we're starting to see a shift from what I call research of convenience to research that matters. That is, instead of picking up your phone and saying, hey, can I hack this thing? You're pretty sure the answer is yes. Saying, can I hack my car? Can I hack that medical device over there? Like, those are really interesting things. And as we look at it, prioritizing those things is happening more and more. You see healthcare organizations that are starting to do full red teaming on their medical devices. As conferences get more of those types of talks, it's only going to accelerate. So I don't know if you've seen the DEF CON tracks this year, but every single one of those tracks is research on something that really matters. They've got one that's life safety, that's all about medical devices, all about cars, all about things that can hurt or kill you. Saving the internet for the future, that's impactful, that's meaningful, right? This is research that matters. It's really kind of cool that one HackerCon, one of the biggest HackerCons, can set the research agenda for the industry. That's a powerful platform. That's a powerful place to be. When you're doing the research, it's also a lot faster sometimes to research in the areas that we're talking about. So typically with a phone or a tablet, you find the bug and then you have to justify why it matters. With medical devices, you really don't have to justify why it matters. It really doesn't take you much longer to find the bug, if at all. So you can spend a lot more time doing the stuff that you really want to do, which is breaking, right? And less time writing reports. Trying to make this change also means building muscles that you don't typically use, such as engaging in the media API. How does the media work? How does PR work? Fuzzing the chain of influence, traversing policy and legal systems, bridging the interfaces between research and real-world application. We're using the same methods and approaches that we know in the technology, but we're applying them to meat space, to the non-technology world. And those skills that we're developing expand outside of just doing research, right? So now you can, if you can talk to the media, if you can talk to your parents, if you can talk to your kids, you can talk to the CEO, right? You're going to use the same language, the same approach, the same types of things to do that communication. It helps you improve. Understanding how to navigate complex political and legal systems help you when you want to organize a community action for a new playground. Or like a friend of mine, he lives on the beach, and the beach rangers were hassling everybody for bringing coolers out there because the rules were so poorly defined that anything could be considered a crime, so they were just writing tickets. Now, it's no surprise that the beach rangers' salaries were being paid by the tickets they were writing. So by knowing some of the political infrastructure, the way that worked, he was able to challenge that, to step up, to get the beach rangers to back down. We're all pursuing a goal here that's bigger than us. As I mentioned before, that gives us a purpose. We're exercising old skills, learning new ones, pursuing things that we think are really important, and we're achieving a measure of success. It helps us to push ourselves to do more than we thought we could, and that's really, really satisfying. It's a gratifying feeling. Pulls us out of burnout, and it keeps us from going back. Transforms frustration into progress, stagnation into exploration, futility into accomplishment, obscurity into visibility, atrophy into exercise, reaction into anticipation, ignorance into education. And all this is coming around at a time when we've begun to get a real sense of the power that we have. For a long time, we were just, those weird computer people who like to hang out in basements. That was like the popular perception. Even some high-ranking public officials said that, hackers are just a bunch of kids in their basements. But as it turns out, all that time we spent on computers, well, now that computers are all around us, that's time well spent. Now that the whole world runs on computers, and we are the people who know how to manipulate them, that gives us a lot of power. That gives us knowledge. That gives us something that a lot of other people don't have. We're the new gurus. We have the superpowers, right? As the media starts focusing more on hacking, and politicians are reaching out to hackers to come inform them, as the public is looking for hackers to lead the way, we're going to do that. As I said earlier, in 50 to 100 years, all the things we're talking about here are going to be figured out. It's going to be done. Self-driving cars are going to do it better than we can hope to. They'll get us there faster, safer, no tickets. Our implanted and wearable computers are going to be fast, robust, and stable. Criminal activity will be illegal, but legitimate research is going to be protected by laws. Researchers will be treated with the same respect and security as they are in other fields. Our civil liberties issues will be settled one way or another, on one side of the fence or the other. That's not my witch's crystal ball. That's just a forward projection of history. But there are 4 reasons why we should still push, and push now, to do more research and to make a change. We can cut down the amount of time we spent flailing around in this awkward period. Right? We accept accelerate the normalization and get back to the way that societies typically run, which is in a non-disruptive fashion. We can reduce friction and collateral damage from some of the things that are happening. Keep our friends from getting arrested for doing security research. Keep people from getting hurt when their car accelerator gets stuck because of a software underrun. We can be a voice of reason for thoughtful discussion to shape the discussions that need to happen so that you get a final position that's more towards openness and freedom than stifling this. And you can avoid a Cuyahoga River moment. If you're not familiar with that analogy, in the 1970s, the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland caught on fire because of all the pollution in it. When a river catches on fire, that's a tipping point. We haven't reached that tipping point yet. But in the 70s, that inaugurated the EPA. That inaugurated something that, even at the time, people felt was a little bit overbearing. Now it's come back, and it's 40 or 50 years on. It's to a point where it's an actual usable agency. But we avoid the overreaction that comes from a Cuyahoga River moment. But we can also prepare for one just in case that happens. Be ready so that we don't overreact. I'll give you some examples of what I'm talking about. My friend Morgan, he's been working with a group called Citizen Lab. He thinks that privacy is actually the #1 safety issue we could fight. Why is that? Well, he spent a lot of his time pulling apart malware that's targeting Syrian dissidents, Syrian activists. That malware gets on those activists' computers and allows the government to track them, to see what they're doing, to get to the organization, to the marches, to arrest people, to put them in jail, torture them, to kill them. So he and groups like Citizen Lab, Telecomics, Tactical Tech, they're fighting to preserve the internet and to protect those who use it to empower themselves. As he likes to say, that's his fight, but it might not be your fight. Kyle Osborne is a member of our community. He goes by Cause, or The Cause. And he took a job out at Tesla. He took an internal IT job to do patch and vulnerability management in the internal network. But the reason he took the job is so he could actually get into the car space, to influence cars, to make them safer. Doing that at a company like Tesla is great. What he was able to do is pretty remarkable. He was able to shape Tesla's behavior to get them to recognize that cars with software are just as vulnerable as desktops with software. Tesla is the first car company that's published a coordinated disclosure policy. So if you break a Tesla and you tell them about it and you work with them to get the issue fixed, they're not going to put you in jail. It doesn't sound like a lot because in our industry, the software industry, that's been around for a while. But they're the first car manufacturer to do that. Detroit's taking notice. That type of thing is not going unheard by the industry. They're looking to copy it. How can we do what Tesla's doing? They're pretty innovative. They're pretty cool. How can we make sure that we're as advanced as they are? How can we say to security researchers, find issues, work with us, help us fix them? We know that we've got problems, but we don't know how to go about solving them in a manner that works. I mentioned earlier publication of vulnerabilities in medical devices. Well, that started out as a researcher who knew about all these vulnerabilities. He was doing full red teaming on his medical devices in his hospital. And as he was going through and doing that vulnerability research, he found just tons and tons and tons of issues. He went and talked to the manufacturer. They didn't really do anything. He talked to the FDA. They didn't really do anything. So he kind of gave up at that point. But he met another researcher, Billy Rios. Billy had connections to the Department of Homeland Security Industrial Control System cert. They were interested. And so they published the vulnerabilities. They published a document that said there are vulnerabilities in 300 medical devices made by one manufacturer. After that, the FDA took notice. They published their own advisory. The company took notice. They published their own advisory. And internally, they reviewed their processes to see what they were doing wrong and how they could improve it. If you think about one of the biggest challenges, one of the organizations and industries where it's hardest to get security into it, it's the really small Internet of Things device makers, right? Like these little Kickstarter projects, the watches that tie in with Bluetooth to your phone, the Fitbit type projects, all these little things. It's just a couple of guys who have this dream, they have this vision. They want to make the world a better place, and they know that technology has a part to play. What they don't have is security researchers to say, wait a minute, you shouldn't do that way, you should do it this way. You shouldn't do it that way, you should do it this way. So last year, Mark Stanislav and Zach Lanier decided, we're going to go do something about that. We're going to give them, essentially, a researcher that they can use. So they started working with a couple of vendors, with some chipset makers, and some others, and they're building out a document library. The project is called Build It Securely. And if you're interested in the Internet of Things, and small Internet of Things especially, go check it out. It's really cool. All of this is published on the Internet. Mark's going to be giving a talk later today, track 2 at 5 p.m. So if you want to drop in, he's going to be talking about how he hacked one of his home devices that he randomly found on his network. So if you're stuck for ideas of what to do, here are some problem spaces that you can begin to tackle. We've got to build on past experience. By studying prior work, the learning curve for an area of inquiry is reduced, and the knowledge can be pushed farther and faster, as well as identifying resources for future efforts, collaboration, tapping them as resources. Facilitating this exchange of experience is crucial. We have to get out of our comfort zone. We have to venture into unknown territory. If we needed technical solutions to solve these problems, we'd have already fixed them by now, right? We don't need technical solutions. We need non-technical solutions. We have to reach outside of the echo chamber. We have to learn the skills that we don't right now have. That's a process that I've been going through. It's a little bit painful at first, but once you get over the initial hurdle, I promise you it's fun, it's exciting, you're exploring a new space, mapping it out in your head. It's just like hacking again, just like learning the intricacies of an x86 box, or hopping on an Android device and figuring out the file system structure. We must publish our ideas. Our knowledge and beliefs can't be verified if they're not subjected to rigor and scrutiny. There can be no collective wisdom without sharing and improving those ideas. We must research what matters. Prefer life-critical systems over everyday ones. Coordinate on prioritizing the devices that you want to research, rather than just selecting those ad hoc. Leaders aren't born, they're self-made. That's a subtle distinction, but it's important. Leaders make themselves given the right motivation and opportunity. Now, I used to think that leadership positions were given to people, but I've come to realize that they're never given. They can't be given. They can only be taken or accepted. Taken if you want to reach out and grab it, or accepted if you reluctantly find yourself the only leader in the room. Leadership is simply initiation and persistence. Being at the forefront and staying there, forcing the issue, not giving up. So start something, even when nobody else is, especially when nobody else is. Continue in spite of your setbacks, especially after your setbacks. Find direction for whatever inspires you to do. Start and continue it. It's up to you. It's not easy, but it's also not hard. The challenge we face is daunting, but it is tractable. We have the right skill sets. We're here at the right time to solve those problems. We have to start now. Every day we delay makes the work more difficult and the consequences higher, and the likelihood of failure hire. I Am the Cavalry is not just about joining a common cause under the leadership of others, although it can be for some. It's about becoming leaders ourselves. It's not, I am the cavalry, come join me. It's, I am the cavalry, you are too. We're all the cavalry. It's not about people following, it's about people leading. I am the cavalry, you are too. You've all been conscripted to lead the charge. Thank you.